Welcome, listeners, to a brand new bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast. And today we have a very special guest. We have author Candace Robinson here with us today. So, Candace, welcome. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. I'm very excited. And if I understand correctly, you're an author and you also have a blog, Literary Dust.
Yes, but I'm pretty much just doing the author stuff now.
Yeah, you've got like a bunch of books. Was it like, I think I saw on Goodreads, I think there were like 30 titles under your name. Do you have 30 books under your name, or was that number correct?
Some are short stories, but some are also box sets, or I have a couple that are anthologies. So I know I have at least 15 novels for sure.
Wow, amazing! Good for you! Yay! So how did you we always start from the beginning. How did you get into this? Why did you decide, yeah, I'm going to be a writer? Like, how did that even start?
Well, I always wanted to write, but earlier on I actually wanted to do like screenwriting, like horror movie screenwriting. But that was like back in high school, and then I went off to college and got married, had a kid. I decided like maybe around 2018, somewhere around there, that I wanted to write a book, but with all that stuff, like it just didn't happen. And then finally in 2017, like I was like, okay. Actually, sorry, 2016, I was like, okay, let me start writing now, because, a couple big events happened, and I was like, okay, well, life's kind of short, so I need to just do it.
You really took that to heart if you wrote 15 books since 2017. Wow! So, did you ever do anything toward the screenwriting, as far as classes or any sort of thing like that, or just by the time you went to college, you were kind of moving away from that already?
Yeah, no, I didn't. I was obsessed with, like, old horror movies, like from an early age, and and then like I was like, well, just like when I was talking to my mom, and I was like, hey, I want to go to college, do film, or be a director, do screenplay, and she's like, I'm not paying for that. So I was just kind of like, okay, that's not gonna happen. So then I actually went to college. I was gonna teach, and then I was like, no, that's not for me either. So it was a lot of trying to decide what I wanted to do.
Yeah, but once you became a writer, your mom wasn't like, didn't I tell you I didn't want you to be a writer, because it's already later. Like, it's not because it was college anymore, so then it's okay now.
Yeah.
That's funny. So looking through a lot of the books that you have, though, it doesn't seem like any of them are specifically horror. It seems like most of them are fantasy. You got fairies. I guess maybe some dark fantasy in there, but I don't know. Do you consider that you've put some horror in there, or did you move over genres?
So I actually don't write like horror books. Like, it's weird. So I do a lot of dark fantasy, like the fairies book. They have dark fantasy in them. I mean, there's a lot of blood and stuff, but there's also romance. Like, I feel like, so I have horror aspects, but it's definitely more dark fantasy. And then, of course, the romance and stuff.
Yeah. When you say dark fantasy, what do you specifically mean by that? Just if it's fantasy with a lot of gore or blood in it, or are there other aspects?
So, example, I guess I have this book 10. It's called Fairies of Oz, and in it, so the main guy, so it's basically a Wizard of Oz, like Dorothy returning to Oz. So he actually, the Tin Man, actually is paid by the lion to retrieve Dorothy to bring to this other lady who's going to take her head.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's there's dark aspects, I guess,
Yes.
And he's an assassin, so obviously, he kills people. So
yeah.
So I consider that the dark fantasy aspects, I guess.
Yeah. Instead of just someone, I guess, learning magic or just going on a quest or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that you had there are 4 books now for that Oz series, or the 4th one is coming out soon?
Yes. The 4th one will be coming out in November.
Wow.
And that'll be the last one.
Do you remember how you even thought of it? Like, you know what the Wizard of Oz needs? It needs fairies. How did you even think about that? Like, what? What?
So, I don't know. I was talking to my co-author on that one. I was like, well, I wanted to do a fae book, but dark. And she had been talking before about doing actually a YA Wizard of Oz retelling. And I was like, well, no, I think we should do something maybe together and do like an adult book, but fae with the Wizard of Oz, because I haven't really seen that. And she was like, yeah. So that kind of happened, and then after this, we're actually going to do a Wonderland one, but with vampires. So
so good.
Yeah.
So did you go back to the original Wizard of Oz to just read the original stories and then we're going to rewrite it, or you weren't trying to base it so much on the original story, just get the general idea of the original story in?
So some of it, yeah, so we just took some aspects more from the original story than the movie. Because, like the movie has the red slippers.
Yeah.
But in the books, they're actually silver. So we went with the silver. But most of it is, basically just the names, obviously, and we put basically a new spin on it. But we did look up, so like that villain Langwither, the one that takes the heads, like I read up on her, like she likes to wear white, and so we kept some of the original, I guess, character traits, maybe.
Yeah. Well, putting in the fairies is definitely a new spin. This is like a side question. Did you ever read the Dorothy Must Die series? I think it's Danielle Page wrote that.
I did read that. I read that back in, I want to say 2016. Maybe it was like right when that fourth one came out. That's when I actually bought the whole series and read it.
Oh, yeah. That one came out a while ago. That's dark. They don't have fairies in it, but that is a dark one also. You can kind of tell from the title, yeah.
I like her. And I don't know if you've read A.G. Howard. I like her books too. She's YA too, though, but she puts like dark aspects on stuff too. She's really good.
Yes, I think I did. I have a visual of a cover in my mind, but I don't remember what it's called. Splintered, is that her? Or
she did Splintered.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, yes. Yeah, that's also kind of like a dark fairy sort of thing. One thing I saw, and especially as a writer myself, and I saw all your book descriptions, almost all of them have like perfect for fans of, and you have either, titles or authors there. Are those things that you thought of? Like, how did you get those? I can never... Not in the sense like, because I'm so special, but I'm like, I don't know how you're supposed to choose what are comp titles. Is that you, or is that like your publisher got that for you?
So I'm pretty bad usually at comp titles. Besides, I think it's my Lyrics and Curses book, because it's set in the 80s. I already knew. I was like, okay, well, Stranger Things, obviously. But a lot of the other ones I had to ask, like some friends, I was like, what would you compare this to? Because I don't know. I mean, because some of the stuff I feel like I try to be unique with some of the stuff, so it's kind of hard sometimes to come up with comps.
Right. You're not just going to say Harry Potter every time because no one wants to hear that. And it's not very specific either to say that because lots of people read that. Yeah. I saw for the Lyrics and Curses book, is that one has sort of like a Pied Piper kind of thing to it?
Sort of.
Or the second book? Because there's two books in that series, right?
There's two books. So, except the second one is, I guess, like a companion. It's still a direct sequel, but it's two different. It's not the same 2 point of views as in book one. Yeah, because I saw something there with Piper, and now I've got my radars up for that now because I'm doing like a Pied Piper trilogy spin-off thing. So I was like, what version where did she go with this? Like, what? I don't know if I should read it like before or after because I don't want that in my head when I'm writing my stuff. You don't want to start accidentally barring for people, even though it looks like a total. No, I mean there's a flute and there's music, but it's not like a Pied Piper retelling or anything. Okay, good. I mean, the universe looks totally different than the universe I'm going with, so I think I'm a little bit safe there. But it's just like, as soon as I saw that, I was like, wait a second, radars up. Just going back a little bit about your Oz series, your co-writer on that, why did you decide to write with a co-writer or to have a co-author on that? Was that something that is this something you knew for a long time that you decided to work with, or is it just kind of came up later on, or what's the deal with that? Well, before Oz, I actually co-authored 2 contemporaries with a different author. Oh. And like with that one, he had read my contemporary and I had read his, just like like a review swap. And he was like, "Oh, our writing's kind of similar. We should do a co-authored book." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." So that's pretty much how those came about. And then with this, I don't know. I guess because me and Amber were already friends and stuff, and a lot of people have been doing co-authored like urban fantasies and paranormal and fantasies lately, and I was just like, it'd be kind of cool to co-author together. Were there any things that you were sort of, I'll say, nervous about or apprehensive about? And because when you're co-authoring, you gotta, usually if you're on the same page, it's great, but there's gonna be some point where you're not gonna agree on something. So was there any sort of apprehension about that, or you're like, oh, it's fine, we'll figure it out, but even if I have to go with her decision, it's a good decision? So before book one, I was basically just like, well, I mean, we can try this, first a couple chapters or whatever, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. Yeah. But actually, both co-authors I've worked with, it's been pretty smooth selling. Because usually, like, she'll have some suggestions. I'm like, oh, okay. Or I'll have suggestions. And she's like, oh, okay, we haven't had, like, any, like, arguments, I guess, over anything yet. Or at least with this series, we didn't, so.
Oh, it's amazing. And before you started the books, did you then have to, like, outline and plot out the whole book and then divide who's writing what, or how did that process work?
So with the outline, I basically just came, because I don't really outline.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I don't either. Yeah.
Yeah, so I basically just did a kind of a brief, estimate about how many chapters we'd have, and I put a sentence per chapter, and then I sent that outline to her, and she checked it, and altered what she thought needed altered, and then we wrote from there. But basically, let's say she wrote chapter 1, send it to me, I edit it, send it back, and then I write chapter 2, and then we do the same thing, back and forth with the chapters.
Is the pace of the writing, as far as just actually getting the writing out and done, is it any different when you're working with a co-author, or everything still takes basically the same amount of time?
Well, whenever I write by myself, my draft 1 goes faster only because I write a super short first draft.
Ah, okay.
So whenever I go to draft 2, I usually fill it up or whatever.
Yeah.
But like with this one, basically I write my first chapter and it's short. So I go and do my basically draft 2 on it and plump it up or whatever and then send it to her. So by the time she gets it back to me, it's already kind of like, and I read through it again, it's like a draft 3.
Yeah, so you're combining like the first 2 steps together almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you were saying that you divide up the chapters, so you kind of do the chapter breakdown, and then when you say you have one sentence, it's kind of like, this is what needs to happen in this chapter kind of thing?
Yeah. And the outline, right?
Yeah, so it's kind of like an outline, but it's not, because you also structured the novel at the same time.
Yeah. And even then, like, sometimes, like, let's say we've done the first 9 chapters, and I start looking down at the outline, then I may be like, well, chapter 13 needs to be, like, altered a bit with that sentence, because we've, because it doesn't ever go 100% with the outline. Because some stuff, just pops up as you write, or a new twist kind of comes to mind or something.
Absolutely. Sometimes breaking down the chapters like that and doing the sentence, it's almost like a placeholder, then almost like this must happen sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have your All series, and you've got the one that like maybe kind of sort of nods at Pied Piper, but not really, but kind of a little bit. Your other series, do they also draw on other folklore tales or anything that's out there, or are some of them just total originals?
My Glass Vault duology, it basically has like a Bride of Frankenstein theme,
okay.
but there's also different retellings inside of it because it's a portal fantasy kind of, and so it has different ones. Like there's a darker Snow White like portal in there, and Jack the Ripper, and stuff like that. And then in my Leith trilogy, the first book has like a Dorian Gray inspiration and Dracula-ish, and then because it's also a fae type book, and then the second one is like werewolf inspired and water magic, and then the third one is zombie-ish, but not like horror movie zombie.
Yeah.
It's different, like more fantasy-ish.
Are most of your books part of series? It sounds like almost all of them are series.
Yeah, except I actually have 2 standalones that are coming out. My standalone, The Bone Valley, comes out in October, and then I have another one, Merciless Stars, that'll come out in February, and those are standalone.
How long does it take you to write? You got so many books. I'm so happy for you that you've got so many books coming out. How long does it take you to write these things?
I don't know. So I've been kind of slowing down recently. So a lot of these I wrote, kind of back to back. I don't know. I'd say for a first draft, though, would be maybe 3 weeks, and then I don't know, I'd say a couple months, to write one, to actually have second draft and ready for beta.
Right. Do you work on multiple projects at the same time, or just have them lined up? Okay, well, this one's got to sit for edits, I'm going to move on to the next one. Are you good with that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, like right now, I guess I have 2 that are with editors, and it's that 4th Fairies of Oz book, and then one of my standalones. I usually don't write at the same time, but if, one's like with editing or something like that, then I can.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're trying to write 2 things at the same time, you're not focusing on both then sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now that you have your 2 standalones, How would you compare writing standalones to series? Did it feel like constricting almost, or was it just, well, I only got one book for this? Yeah.
Actually, these other, like, my late series, like Clouded by Envy, that was actually meant to be a standalone. So it was lyrics and curses. They were all kind of supposed to be standalone, but then as I was writing them, I was like, no, it needs the companion. So it's like they're still kind of standalone series, but I felt like some of these other characters needed their story too, I guess.
Yeah, it did look like that for most of your series, you do switch your protagonists over. So, like, you're keeping the main story arc, but then you're telling it from someone else's point of view.
Well, because even the Oz books, they're all they're standalones, but the series connects,
Right. So I have that. I have my one companion series, but trying to keep the timelines in order was not fun. But the timelines crossed over. Instead of it being the stories aren't told in chronological order, as in there's a lot of scenes that cross over. But I started.
Oh, okay.
So is that kind of what you did, or you made sure everything was just in chronological order, but you just kind of switched out your protagonist?
I think all of them are in chronological order, except I think with the Oz series, book 2 and book 3 kind of happen at the same time, but the rest are pretty much in order.
So you didn't have to start referring back to, when did this happen again? Did this already occur or not? Is this character still supposed to be here? You didn't have to deal with any of that kind of stuff then.
Right.
That's a relief. I totally once resurrected a character that was supposed to be dead. And my editor flagged that like, this guy's not around anymore. You can't write him into this. Oops. Your publisher that you've got, Midnight Tide Publishing, they're not entirely a traditional kind of publisher, right? So how did you come to them as your publisher? And can you describe a little bit how they work?
I was with small traditional presses a couple times in the past, right. And I wanted to be indie. My friend Elle, she actually owns Midnight Tide. So basically, it's still indie publishing. The main difference is your ISBN for your books are umbrellaed under them, I guess. But it's like an author type. Like all the authors there, they help each other like on like cover reveals. So it's kind of like a network still. So if you want to indie publish, it's a good also like boost to help, I feel like,
right,
while you still have all your control.
So the control factor is kind of what differs over the traditional publisher in that?
Yes.
And then it's kind of like a team of writers and editors, right? That are all just, you cross promote and cross edit. Is that even a thing, or like what?
Yeah, well, so like the editor, I think she has a few editors that she suggests, and that they, give discounts to the authors or whatever if they use them, but you don't have to use them. Like for my Oz books, I've used a different editor, but it's just a suggestion in case you can't, unless like let's say you're new and you can't find an editor. Well, right. She gives you a few suggestions if you want to check them out.
Yeah. And then design and layout and all that kind of stuff they take care of, or you also have to kind of find your people for that? Or you have a choice also?
So I format myself, but like Elle formats, like if you want to pay her to format, she formats. And then cover design, I think most of them have their own cover designers that they use. Most
of the covers I've seen from Midnight Tide most of them are fantastic. I guess everyone just knows how to choose good designers. That it's not one person doing that. That's there's a lot of talent out there. And then between all your books, have you worked with different editors on different books?
Well, the Oz book, I've used the same editor on that, but on my late series, those were actually originally with a small press, and I got my rights back. So whenever I republished them myself, they were already edited.
Ah, right, yeah, okay.
Lyrics and Curses, that duology, and my 2 standalones coming up, I've used the same editor for those.
When you're looking at an editor, just for you personally, like what would you say, top 1, 2, or 3, however many things, what are the top things you're looking with a good editor?
One, that they get your story, and I don't really do editing for like story structure because I know how I want my story usually, so I usually have my beta readers do that, like if there's anything that needs to be changed. Okay, so whenever it's time for editor, I don't want any like story structure type thing. Like if there's like a little plot hole and you need a little sentence fix, that's fine, but I'm not going to rewrite like the whole book. Yeah, because I know some editors will be like, you need to rewrite this. So mainly, I guess, just that they're good with the sentence structure. I feel like the line editing.
Right, yeah, because you definitely need another set of eyes for that.
Yeah.
You can read something 100 times and pass over the same mistake all 100 times. Yeah. And then, so just because you mentioned the beta reader, so how does that work with beta readers? Because I think a lot of people have heard the term, but they don't necessarily know what it is.
Oh, okay. So like a beta reader or critique partner, like, and I don't try to use too many. I feel like if you have a couple good ones that will read your manuscript and point out what they think needs fixed or adjusted, that's good because you can
Yes.
have, I feel like, too many opinions, and then it's like, well, should I go this direction or this direction? So if you have, like, I'd say 2 to 3 that just understand your writing, your story basically, then, and obviously can help improve it, then those are the ones you should go with, I feel like.
Yeah. So do you have like your team of beta readers that you've been using for your past however many books? Because you kind of, I guess you could say, developed a rapport with them, or just you feel like if they get your writing, so you're going to trust them with your story, or do you get different beta readers each time?
Well, here lately, I've been using pretty much the same. Like, well, actually, Amber, my co-writer, she's one of my beta readers. I trust her, obviously,
Yeah.
since I've also wrote with her, so I know she understands my writing.
Yes. Because the worst is when someone reads and they just don't get it.
But
Yeah.
I guess one no, I guess, is if you have a beta reader and they read it and they're pretty much just like, oh, that's good, and there's like no feedback, well then it doesn't help you.
That's so true. I just had that recently with someone.
Oh yeah, I've had that before.
Yeah,
Lots
and
of times.
it's like, no, everything's good. You did such a great job, and you're like, that's not helpful. Nothing is ever that good that it doesn't need something. Find an and out of place or something. You got there has to be something. I know there's something. And then just one more on all this business stuff for promoting your book or getting the word out there, or maybe it might be different now, I guess, because I guess you probably built your readership at this point. But do you try to get ads out there or social media, or just try to get people talking about it?
So I'm pretty bad still kind of marketing. Marketing's like the worst.
Yes.
So I've been looking into ads more, like the Facebook ads and the Amazon ads. I know some people use like the Instagram tours, so I may be trying one of those later on. But I don't feel like I do too much besides I have a newsletter. So I use Story Origin for like newsletter swaps.
Right.
So you can find other authors and, like the dates that you want, and then, swap the book. So, I showed their book and then they show mine. So hopefully other readers will check it out.
Yeah. Newsletter, is that a weekly, monthly? How often do you send out a newsletter?
I usually do a month. I know some people do like weekly and bi-weekly, but I feel like weekly is too much.
Yeah. Whenever I hear about newsletters, I think my mind just automatically just stops. Like, don't tell me. I don't want to hear about the newsletters. Because you have to try to, aside from, whatever books you're cross-promoting, do you also try to write articles or some sort of thought or blog piece for that? Or like, here's what I'm reading? Or can you just, like, what do you fill your newsletter with?
Okay, so the newsletter, I'm trying to think what all I put in there. Basically, so sometimes I'll put in something personal too at the front. Like, let's just say you have a vacation or something cool that's happened in your life, you can put that. And then I'll put, like, if it's like a release or a cover reveal, and then what I'm reading, what I'm listening to, what I'm watching, and then books that I suggest maybe checking out. That's about it.
Yeah, I guess you can't really ever go wrong with books that I'm reading to check out. I guess a writer, that should be pretty standard. I get, like, easy to be able to access that. Yeah. As a general thing, what kind of books do you read cross-genre? Do you look for specific kinds of books? Or what do you usually reach for if you're reading something?
I'll read pretty much like anything, I think. Mainly fantasy, dark fantasy, paranormal, contemporary. But I really like Carrie Maniscalco.
Yes.
I don't know if you've read her, but
Yeah.
I love her books.
Stalking Jack the Ripper.
Good about the Wicked was
Yeah.
really. Did you read that new one? That one was really good.
No, I haven't read that one. Yeah.
See, I would like to find more, if I could, like more like her, like the A.G. Howard, like more with the darker aspects versus just fantasy. But I really do. I mean, I like Sarah J. Maas too.
Yeah.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. So sort of also what you're writing, but not entirely what you're writing.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So we always wrap up with a fill in the blank or complete the sentence of, I love it when either you can use writers or books or editors or publishers, whichever one you use. I like it when they do fill in the blank, and I don't like it when they do fill in the blank. So how would you complete those two sentences?
I like it when books have morally gray characters, and I don't like it when books have love triangles.
Oh, very good. Yes, very good. Okay, one second. I have to ask follow-up on that. Yes, those are very good answers.
Okay.
So morally gray characters is very good, because that usually means that this person, either you want to hate/love them, but then there's something about them that doesn't let you love/hate them, right? So you're looking at that. Would you specify, like, I love when protagonists are morally gray or antagonists are morally gray, or just in general morally gray because it just makes them deeper?
Yeah, I think in general.
Whoa. And do you have a preference of, I like it when evil characters also have a lot of good, or I like it when good characters also have some not great aspects, or also no preference there?
Ooh, yeah, both of them.
Whoa, okay, very good. And then you don't like with the love triangles. Yeah, I think a lot of people, people have started to move away from love triangles for the most part, which is very reassuring and refreshing. So it seems like also in your books, you kind of have it very specific, like who your two people who are going to be either at odds with each other or not to. Yeah, it's very specific who those are going to be. So we don't have to worry about any surprise characters coming in to like distract on that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny how love triangles did become such a big thing for a while, but I think most people, and it was it for a long time, but I think most people are grateful that we moved away from that.
Yeah, well, except I noticed in the adult genre, I'm not going to hate on it because I've never read them yet, but that reverse harem is really big, and I'm like, I don't know, like a girl, and like there's like, let's say a girl, and there's like 4 guys. I'm like, that's just too much for me, But you can read and write whatever you float your boat, but I just can't. Too many people.
Yeah, and sometimes you're like, does it ever really happen that someone has like 6 guys to choose from? Do we know anyone like that? Yeah. Who are they? Yeah. Well, very good. Well, Candace, thank you so much for being on. It was really nice to speak with you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
This was a bonus episode of Oh My Word podcast featuring author Candace Robinson. To find out more about Candace and her work, please visit the link in the episode notes. To find out more about Oh My Word podcast and keep track of all the great stuff we're up to, follow us on Instagram at Oh My Word Podcast, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and check us out at eltenenbaum.com. Music is by Tim Burke. Thanks so much for joining us. Catch you next time.